Welcome back to another episode of Wooden Sticks. I'm your host, Kevin Gork. Thanks for being a part of the podcast today. And we like to sprinkle through all kinds of different guests on this show. We're going to have a great summer full of hockey conversation. Even after all the seasons are done, we're going to keep talking our favorite sport. And today is near and dear to my heart because before I ended up working with the Minnesota Wild starting in 2006 with Fox Sports North at the time, I was for 10 years the head coach of the women's hockey team at the University of St. Thomas. I started in 1998, coached all the way through the 2007 season. After that season, I made the transition into sports broadcasting kind of full time. I miss coaching. I loved it. I did it for 5 years on the boys high school hockey side, 10 years women's Division III. And one of my really good friends from back in those days, and we've stayed in touch, is Joe Cranston. Joe, the original coach back in 2000 of the University of Wisconsin River Falls women's hockey program. And, you know, when you end up doing the job for a decade, you're at the rink recruiting the same players. We used to play River Falls a couple times a year. When we made it to the NCAAs, they were always there waiting because they were a terrific program. And this past season, watching from afar during our Minnesota Wild season and seeing the success that Joe was having, they had a perfect season going. And we'd stay in touch and he'd give me updates. And they got to be the favorite and the host city for the NCAA tournament. But at that point now, you're 27-0, you're 28-0, you're 29-0, you're 30-0. That pressure is building as the number one team, and you're undefeated, and you're having to beat great teams like Gustavus and Adrian, and then in the finals, taking on a really good team from Elmira. They got the job done. They had the perfect season. It was remarkable. The most wins in the history of women's Division III hockey. In fact, the only other undefeated team that I know of was back a couple of years ago. Middlebury went 27-0-0 in 2022. So one hell of an accomplishment for Joe and his program. And so there's going to be a lot of stories that revolve around this past season, but we're also going to try to take it back in time to when women's and girls hockey was really just getting going back in the late 90s and how this thing has grown. I had the chance to attend the Minnesota PWHL playoff game over the weekend. I went to the Friday game, didn't make it to the Sunday game. Over 9,000 fans at the X, the game I attended, and the atmosphere was spectacular. The hockey, which has been all season long. I've watched a bunch of games. It's been really good hockey, but I think there'll be a trickle-down effect here locally, and I think Joe will have a really good take on, 2, 3, 5, 10, 15 years down the road, having the success that the PWHL is having. And when I walked around that building in St. Paul on Friday, I could not believe how many young girls were not only in the building, but wearing purple, wearing their favorite team's gear with the towels, with the pom-poms, cheering along. I have to think that that's only going to help the game grow in all these markets. And as you know, the P-Dub is in Boston, it's in New York, it's in Minnesota, it's in Toronto, Montreal. These are great hockey hotbeds, but there's going to be a trickle-down effect. I think Joe will have a take on that. And then just to get caught up with Joe. And when you coach women's Division III hockey, you have to make money doing more than just coaching. You're not making money like PJ Fleck and some of the Division I football coaches are, basketball coaches. Division III hockey is a different animal. And Joe has a really unique story in his offseason. A lot of coaches end up doing the hockey school thing. But Joe has been proprietor at the Minnesota State Fair for years with Scotch Eggs, and can't wait to dive into how that got going, the success he's had with those Scotch Eggs. It's one of my first stops every single year when I get to the Minnesota State Fair is to his stand over by the State Fairgrounds Coliseum and the Scotch Eggs. They're unbelievably good. It's a kind of a hard-boiled egg wrapped in a circle like a ball of sausage, kind of like the size of a softball, and they are so good. So Joe's done that at a couple different state fairs in the offseason. It's allowed him to really focus on what he loves to do more than anything else, which is be at the rink and to coach hockey. And he's an unbelievable coach. He was the National Coach of the Year. And his success at River Falls goes a lot deeper than just this past season. He's been good for a long, long time. And we're going to talk about that with Joe Cranston today from River Falls, and really looking forward to kind of how he sees the game now compared to where it was when we got started doing this thing. I started in 98. He started in 2000. So how the game has changed in that time frame, and then where it's headed now with the success of the PWHL and how the game has grown so remarkably here in recent years. And looking forward to a great catch up with my dear friend Joe Cranston. Now, for you folks, it's summertime. It's officially here. In fact, as we record this podcast today, we've got a little summer storm coming through, so you might hear some thunder and lightning in the background. But the weather forecast for the weekend looks spectacular. Why wouldn't you want to be on the water? I mean, this is the time to get out there and enjoy it. Now, it's a hassle to try to buy a boat, find a place to store it in the off season, hook it up, unhook it. We've got a great way for you guys to bypass that. It's Bay to Bay Boat Club, and the season is up and the season is running. It's the country club boating experience. You show up, you park, you check in, and you're on the water within 3 minutes. When you get done, take your gear, check out, off you go back into your car. No cleanup, no filling the tank with gas, nothing. It's all done by the boat club. It's spectacular, and memberships are available now at Bay to Bay Boat Club. Call them at 952-401-3880 or just head to their website, baytobayboatclub.com. All right, folks, when people think of the Freemasons, I get it. They think of the secret handshakes, the unusual hats, and of course, all those fun pancake breakfasts. Minnesota Masonic Charities would prefer, though, that you think about the work they do right here in our community. Places like the Masonic Cancer Center at the U of M, Masonic Children's Hospital, of course, the Masonic Home in Bloomington. They're just a few examples of the important work that Freemasons support here in Minnesota. As part of the largest fraternal organization in the world, Masons have consistently answered that call when it comes to charitable needs here with our people in our community. I'm happy that Minnesota Masonic Charities has chosen Wooden Sticks as the place to help spread that word, and I can't wait to learn more about all their fun programs here in the weeks to come as we segue into summer. Now, the final thing I'll leave you with before we get to Joe Cranston is I'd love to have you or some of your family and friends be a part of the show. So give Karen Cleary a quick nod. And she's easy to find, Kate Cleary at talknorth.com. All your advertising needs, we will pump it up. And as you know, the hockey community takes care of their own. So once you're here, we're going to cradle you in those arms and we're going to take real good care of you. We're going to get that word out. Whatever type of promotion you need, we're here for you. Otherwise, just spread the word that we got great hockey conversations. And this is a guest-driven show. We're going to cover men's hockey, women's hockey, youth hockey, high school hockey, you name it. We're going to have those type of guests for you throughout the offseason into next year with the Minnesota Wild. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And today we're going to focus on women's Division III hockey and an undefeated perfect season. After a quick break, we hear from River Falls head coach Joe Cranston. Stay tuned. All right, we're back from that quick break here on Wooden Sticks. And as I mentioned, this is a dear friend of mine. As I talked about in our open, just completed the perfect season with River Falls. And I remember our battles well. They usually went his way back in the day when I was coaching at St. Thomas. Joe Cranston's here. Joe, great to hear from you.
Great to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to come on here and talk. And yeah, it's anytime I can talk about this past season that we had at UWRF, I'm very much in favor of that.
I bet. 25 years, you've built the program from the ground up. You're the only coach River Falls hockey has ever had on the women's side. So you've had a couple of months now to digest what you went through. And I can't even imagine once you get to a certain point in the year when, every coach kind of feels like during the year, there's got to be a lull where we can maybe kind of hit the reset button, remind these ladies they got to work a little harder, a little more dedication. And you didn't have that. You had a couple of scares, a couple of overtime games with your rivals from Eau Claire. But now as you get closer to the tournament, you've got this giant target on your back. You're undefeated. You've got the perfect season going. What was that stress like?
Oh, it was definitely stressful. Yeah, when it started to set in, that the fact that we just kept winning and winning, and and we did have some close ones, and we had some scares, and we had some games where we didn't play very well and probably should have lost, but this team just somehow found a way to keep winning and winning and winning games. And but yeah, as that stress got closer, and even at our last game of the regular season, to go 25-0, I just kept thinking somebody's going to beat us, and then, but yeah, then we're on Channel 5 News, and we're getting a lot of publicity, and everybody's talking about the perfect season. And it's really not what you wanted to talk about or even think about. You wanted to just keep it simple, not be distracted, and go a game at a time and all that, which we did. I thought we did a great job. But yeah, the stress was on me. I tried to keep that away from the girls and the team, but yeah, there was definitely a lot of stress. And there's been so many times over, like you just said, 25 years here, and we've played in 7 Frozen Fours. We've made it the championship game once, and we've been so close so many times. And you just kind of think, here we go again. Is somebody going to beat us, or we're going to have an off day, and then we're going to have that same type of ending that we had, but it just never happened. We just kept winning and winning and winning, and ended up, winning a national championship and going 31-0-0.
And I look at the highlights earlier today of that championship game, and the first thing that struck me, and I was just in awe, is the crowd. Like, you had people hanging from the rafters in that championship game in your building. You guys earned the right to host, and it rarely happens where a Western team's allowed to host that Frozen Four. But for you as a coach to know where the game started 25 years ago, and to walk out there and see that atmosphere for a championship game before the puck even dropped, you had to feel like a winner.
Oh yeah, and yeah, the community support. In that championship game, UWRF wasn't even in session, so we didn't even have students there, and we had about 50 maybe, as we're normally, we're going to get several hundred. And we sold out every game throughout the playoffs, the conference, and then into the NCAA Frozen Four. Yeah, and I often think that just like 25 years ago, honestly, we might have 20 people at a game. And to see that kind of community support, and just how great it is for Division III women's sports, but specifically for the community support we had. It sold out every game, like I said, but even every TV in this town, and every bar and restaurant and business, and it was a really big deal for our community. But it was really awesome to be a part of that. And but yeah, the sport and how it's grown, and it's amazing. I would have never, in my wildest dreams 25 years ago, thought that could have happened.
What was the calling card of this year's team? I've coached against you. I've watched your teams for decades play the game, and you guys always play it the right way. You're smart without the puck. You don't make big mistakes. You've always been well coached. But this year's team, Joe, specifically, what allowed them to have that ultimate success?
I've been asked that, and there's a number of different things, but I think when I look at the whole year overall, the biggest thing was leadership. I had phenomenal. I had 6 seniors that were just so good. My captains, Maddie McCollins and Holly Eckers and Alex Hunke, and they just, we preach a lot. Number one, hard work, but you have to respect everything. You can't take anything for granted, and you have to appreciate everything. And that's always something that's been a big part of my coaching philosophy. And I think these captains and this group of seniors really pushed that. I've never had a group of kids who appreciated coming to the rink every day and were so respectful. And I just think we were prepared. We were just prepared, and we stayed focused. And even when we had a game or two where we didn't play very well, I just think it came right back to leadership. There was a time we're playing up in Superior, and we're down 1-0 after 2, and I didn't even go in the locker room afterwards, or between periods. You just leave it up to them, and we came out and scored 4 goals in the third and won 4-1, and it just it was a crazy group of seniors, and the whole team. They found a way to win, and on paper, I probably had a better team the last 4 years than this year. This was not the team that I expected or anybody expected to win a national championship, and even more crazy to win every game and go undefeated.
Okay, so let's go back to that championship game against Elmira. You had outplayed them for 2 periods, yet it's a 1-1 game going to the third. You just mentioned in one of the earlier games, down a goal, you didn't head into the room. What was the message, if there was a message, and how was it delivered in a 1-1 game with the national championship waiting in the balance?
Yeah, quite frankly, I don't even remember. I didn't spend a lot of time in the locker room, but, we outshot them 37-17, I think, in the first two
Yep.
periods. And we controlled the game, every aspect of the game. And I don't remember saying anything to motivate them. I just went in the locker room. We switched up our forecheck and got a little more aggressive and got all five people involved in the forecheck, and it was kind of all or nothing. I knew we were a better team, and I just didn't want to sit back and make the mistake that you see at so many times when the better team just keeps playing or kind of sits back or protects a lead or whatever. I didn't want that to happen, so I just went in the locker room and we just pretty much got our D involved and went with a 2-1-2 automatic pinch all over the ice and just were all over them. And that turned out to be a big difference. We had to kill off a 5-on-3, and Matty McCollins is so good at that, and great defenseman, but we had really good defensive structure too throughout, and so we gave me the opportunity to be aggressive and throw that kind of forecheck at somebody when your goaltending is solid and you have six really good D.
And how did you guys celebrate? I know in the NHL with the Stanley Cup, there's always these legendary stories of passing the cup around. But as a group, did you guys have a special time after the year to kind of, after the dust had settled and the reality of what you accomplished set in? Did you guys have a chance as a group, or maybe you guys as coaches, to just sit back and really have a chance to just enjoy what you accomplished?
I wish we would have had more of that. I mean, obviously the night, when we won it and out on the ice and afterwards and we're all celebrating together, very fun. But like I said, it was spring break here. So the day
Sure.
after that, I mean, Carol Evan was here in the morning and I managed to get a few girls together and we did a little thing on Carol Evan. But other than that, the girls kind of scattered and we went to that one Wild game where they recognized us, and
Yes.
the PWHL, the Minnesota team, tried to get us there, but it was just hard because they were on break about that time, and then they came back, and my team was all scattered. So we just had one get together here at my house a few weeks ago, and it's still kind of hard to believe the whole thing, but you tell these girls, you guys they don't even really know yet, but this team will
Right.
forever be bonded together,
Oh,
going into the Hall of Fame in 10 years. And there's people talking how this was maybe the best D3 women's hockey team ever, with the fact that we, beat Gustavus 4 times this year, and they're defending national champions, ranked 2 in the country, and beat Adrian twice, who's 2, and just to run the table. So I don't even think the girls maybe realize yet, or maybe who knows if they ever will, but it was quite an accomplishment. And, we really didn't have that much time to sit back and talk about it or think about it, but still setting in.
I'm excited to get your thoughts later in our conversation here about the PWHL. I really believe there's going to be a trickle down effect, but I want to go back to where it all started because, at least getting into women's hockey, we have kind of a similar path. We both finished college up around 1990, 91, both did some high school hockey. And then kind of at the turn of the century, me in 98 at St. Thomas, you in 2000 at River Falls, started programs. And I never in a million years would have imagined back when I was in college and playing the game. And then when I got into teaching, I never would have thought of women's hockey. But there I was in 1998. How did you end up as the first coach and so far the only coach at River Falls?
And again, I didn't know going into this thing. There was actually a little ad in the back of Let's Play Hockey, in the back of the paper, saying they're going to start a women's hockey program at River Falls. And I thought about it, and I talked to my dad about it, who was a 30-year hockey coach up in Fergus Falls, and we had girls hockey in the '70s up there, and a lot of the towns did. My dad started girls hockey in northern Minnesota back in the '70s, and he always said he enjoyed coaching girls more than boys. And so when I saw that ad in the paper, and I just, I'd already been coaching high school boys for 12 years, and I thought, maybe I should apply for this. And my dad was the one that said, yeah, it might be fun, but might be a little frustrating too, because as you know, the hockey wasn't too great back then. And, you'd go to a high school game and there wouldn't even be seniors on any of the teams,
Hmm.
when you and I were up in the stands. And
Correct.
I just, and that was, it was late in the winter when that ad came out. And I remember I went into the cities to watch I think I went down to Inver Grove or somewhere and I watched. Funny enough, I went to Egan against Roseville, and I think Natalie Darwitz was an 8th grader playing.
Wow.
And you had the Curtin girls out there who you know very well, and I'm watching these young kids out there and thinking, yeah, it's probably not going to be that fun at first. The hockey's got a long ways to go, and I'd already been coaching some pretty good boys high school teams, but I just looked at the growth and how good some of these younger girls were coming up, and I just thought, this might be a really fun thing, and it's always fun to take something and build it and start it from scratch. And so I applied and got that job. There weren't that many people applied for it. I know that, probably 3-4 people. And right now, if I left here, then there'd be hundreds of applicants probably who would want this job, but.
For sure.
Back then, it wasn't a sought after thing, but it was really fun to start it and run it my way and have the freedom to build it and do it my way, and definitely paid off.
Do you see yourself ever coaching anywhere else, or do you feel like this is where I'm supposed to be? I remember vividly how much passion you had for River Falls, being a graduate there, and for this program, being that you started it, going back, well, now it's 17 years since we were kind of going toe to toe back in the day. And I even remember back then how much you cared about it. I can only imagine with the success and as you've built this program up, how hard it would be to leave. But is there part of you that says, what if, or are you kind of locked in here?
No, I'm locked in. I've always been locked in. There were some times early on when, I looked at some of these D1 openings, and, I got a couple calls from a couple ADs and letters from, a couple of D1 school, a few actually in the area here. And I never really had any passion to go the Division I route. Even as a player, I had opportunities to play D1 and just never really, it was never a thing for me. And I like the D3 experience. And like you said, I have a passion about River Falls, and, went to school here and loved it here. And all my assistant coaches graduated from here, met my wife at River Falls. And it's always fun when you can give back, You and I have talked about that. And that's an important thing. If you give more than you take, that's what it's all about. And so, yeah, I've been very fortunate here, but I am about as grounded as you can be. I don't get that question too much anymore. I used to get it a lot, but now it's, how much longer are you going to coach hockey? I get that question a lot more than are you going to stay here? But yeah, definitely have enjoyed it here and not going anywhere.
How much did your time in Fergus Falls, you mentioned your dad coached there for a long time. How much did all of that time set you up for not only the coach you are today, Joe, but the hockey player you were, the passion you have for the game of hockey? How much did Fergus Falls impact your life moving forward?
Well, it had a huge impact. And like I said, my dad had the biggest influence on me, but, I had some good coaches and I had some not so good coaches. And you learn from all of that. I had not a very good high school experience starting out, and not a very good coach, but I'm thankful that I had that, because you learn a lot from that too. You learn what not to do and all that. But then, I've told you before, my senior year, I had Tim Cullen and Charlie Burgraff. And those two guys had as big an influence on me. And I only had them 1 year. It was my senior year. But, I was just down in Florida giving a speech for being National Coach of the Year. And, I was telling stories about Charlie Burgraff and what an influence he had on me. And, it's great that we can be friends now. And, we'll go kayaking down the river here. And I'm telling him a story about he invited me over to his house to play ping pong one time. And he didn't really even remember the story, but I went over to his house and he was just married right out of college. I mean, he was basically a kid, and that just had such a huge impact on me that a coach would care that much about a kid. And Tim Cullen was always talking about just there's you have to pay a price for success. That was the first time I'd ever heard that, and the girls on my team, they hear that from me every single day, that success has a big price tag. And if you're not willing to pay the price, don't be here, because we're going to pay a big price for our success. And so I learned that, and just growing from those two guys, but just growing up in Fergus and being at the rink. My dad was either the president of the Hockey Association or the scheduler. He's always coaching teams. And I was just at the rink all the time, and just growing up, I think, with that northern Minnesota, it's a little different than, a Burnsville experience maybe, but, we would go to Crookston or Roseau or Thief River, and we'd stay with the other families, so the kids on the other team were your good friends, and you grew up with all those relationships, and you never stayed in a hotel. But every weekend, you'd go off and you'd be maybe staying at the Broughton house, or the Christian's house, or you get to know those families. And I just think that was a really, really wholesome, neat experience for, just the outdoor rink atmosphere growing up was so fun.
And I think it's funny because my memories of recruiting when I was at St. Thomas, I always had a conversation with my coaching staff, and it always revolved around the balance that we wanted on that roster. And I always mentioned, hey, I don't care what the numbers look like. I don't care who fits where, but we need to have a significant influence of 2-1-8ers. And 2-1-8ers are exactly what you're talking about, Joe. The hockey players that grew up playing up north. And to me, that was the lifeblood of long-term success at the Division III level. You needed that 2-1-8 influence, and your teams always had that.
Yeah, and people give me a hard time about it because I'm a 2-1-8er, but we always have a lot of 2-1-8ers. I think a few years ago, I think we had 8 of them on our team.
Wow.
Just all across northern Minnesota. This year, I mean, I consider anywhere basically Alexandria north. You basically, even though that's 3-2-0 now, but that was 2-1-8 back in the day. And this year we had a couple Warroad kids and a Proctor Hermantown, couple Alec kids, and I love the 2-1-8ers. Always have. We recruit those kids, but you used to say back in the day, you kind of laughed because you'd look at my roster and I'd have kids from
it was
Litchfield
unbelievable.
And
Yes,
Fairmont, Minnesota, and all these places that you'd never see kids on rosters. And even this year, I mean, my roster was Avon, Hutchinson, Wilmer, 2 from Alexandria, Monticello, a couple Farmington, Buffalo, St. Croix, Wisconsin. I mean, it's just, I've always liked those kids that come out of these programs, these diamonds in the rough that, we've always done that. You said way back in the day, I'll never forget it. I don't remember, it was after a game, and you said, every year you get all these kids that nobody's ever heard of. Yep. And then the names on the rosters change, but you put the same product on the ice. And I think that's that's because of those type of kids we recruit. It's a lot of it's 2-1-8ers, but up and down I-94 and Avon and Monticello and Melrose. We're talking to a kid right now from Melrose. That's hilarious. But those are the kids that get her done for us, and they fit into our style of hockey and our philosophy here, and we've had a lot of success with it.
So cool. So I think for the average hockey fan out there, they get it. Like, Division III coaches aren't making PJ Fleck money. There's not a lot of NIL for our players either. So I think your backstory is so unique in terms of how you've made this whole thing work, because in the winter, I've watched you. You're all in with your hockey program. You do put the work in. You are as good a coach as I've ever seen. But to be able to have that time in the winter, some people have to coach and maybe they teach on the side or maybe they run a hockey school. For you, it's Scotch Eggs. And I think for our listeners out there, and I hope some have had your Scotch Eggs at the Minnesota State Fair, it's my first stop every time I walk into that facility. But how did you get involved? And tell us the backstory of the Scotch Eggs, because you run a booth at our state fair, and I believe maybe one other one, that allows you to have the time to coach in the winter. And this is big money.
Yeah, I don't know if it's big money, but it's
it's good money.
It's good money, and I did the concession thing has really allowed me to, like you said, it frees up my time in the winter where I've never, besides raising a family when my kids were little. Besides that, I've never had other distractions. I've never had to teach or go to do another job like a lot of Division III coaches. I work June, July, and August, and like you said, the Minnesota State Fair, I do the Scotch Eggs. That's the only place I do those. But I have 5-6 trailers, and I'm out at North Dakota the whole month of July. And I started out when I was a senior in college here. I knew I was going to be a teacher, and I just wanted to make some money in the summer. So I built this little cart and was selling Hawaiian shave ice, and that's kind of how I started. And my dad and he quit the corporate world up in Fergus, and he bought a little trailer, and he and I ended up being in business together. But we applied many years with different weird ideas for the Minnesota State Fair. And I think it took us 12 years. And my mom finally said, why don't you try Scotch Eggs? Because that was something she had made for us, because it's pretty hard to find Scottish food that anybody's going to eat. But we're Cranston, we're Scottish. So my mom, even though she was Norwegian and Swede, would make us Scotch Eggs. And anyway, so we applied with that, and they said no at first, but we were persistent, and a couple of years of trying, we finally got in with them. And now we've been at the Minnesota State Fair for 25 years with them. And every year we sell more than the previous year, every single year that goes up. So we must be putting out a pretty good product.
It's a great product, I got to tell you. And I think once people try them, they make it a staple in their state fair experience. And I've brought many a friend over there, family member, and I'm like, you got to try this. And they're probably more of an item you want to share because it's a softball size piece of sausage with that egg inside of it. But I got to tell you, it is my very favorite thing at the fair. And I think once people try it, they get it. And then the word of mouth spreads, and it's remarkable. And it's always busy. What I love about it is a lot of times you've got some of your players there working in the stand, which I think is fabulous. That it's kind of a family atmosphere for River Falls hockey.
Yeah, it is. It's fun. It's nice to have the girls. The girls on my hockey team basically do the Minnesota State Fair, and then I have some at the North Dakota State Fair. And, and that's really, again, just makes it so much more fun when you're with those girls. We were just did a tulip festival down in Orange City, Iowa, a couple of weeks ago for a week down there. And, I had 8 of the girls with me down there. And it's just so fun to go and that being in that whole concession world, just like going down to Orange City, Iowa, and there's all kinds of, I've been going there for 28 years, I think, to this festival. And, there's just so many people in those towns that follow our hockey team and get to know the girls. And it's a pretty neat deal. But yeah, it's just makes it so much more fun when you get to be with your players and do something that's, 180 degrees from hockey.
Well, and going back to our coaching days, we had conversations about recruiting and planning, and you were always super organized. Everything you did, from the way your home games were orchestrated to the way your teams played and the way you recruited. We've talked about this here today, but I was struck by part of one of your answers in the press conference after that NCAA championship game. And you talked about back in your office on your desk, how you not only had your lineup for this coming year, but you might've had a lineup, kind of a would-be lineup for the year after that. So 2 years out, how do your teams look right now, knowing that you probably, you just had this perfect season, right? And I'm sure you're not going to have the exact same team. How do the Falcons look moving forward?
Yeah, we'll be good again. We'll be kind of a younger team, I think, but yeah, I have, I look at my lineup sitting right here in front of me. And there's certain kids I think that compliment other kids, and and it's, you obviously I won't go with this lineup, but I might start the year with it and tweak it here and there. But you always like to look at certain kids and how they might complement somebody else and those type of things. But we have a good class coming in next year. We have 6 committed for next year, and I believe 6 for the following year. And so yeah, we're a ways out there. We're looking at 10th graders, and it's we're organized in that way. But I have Jim Walsh is my assistant coach, who does really 99% of the recruiting, and he's just fantastic, and he does a great job, and nobody works harder than he does. So that's
Yeah.
we'll have a good squad again.
He's just a quality human being too. Like you, he's the kind of guy you'd want to go have a beer with and watch hockey with. Then I was talking to Mark Mackesy, my former assistant, this morning, and I mentioned that you and I were going to connect today for the pod, and he was so excited and couldn't wait to listen, wanted me to say hello. But that was the camaraderie we had. Mike Collins over at Eau Claire, the battles with Mike here. And I look at what you guys did last year, and the fact that Gustavus had won the national championship the year before, and the West had finally arrived, right? For so many years, we just couldn't get over that
Yep.
hump. But you mentioned you beat them 4 times, and you had to beat them 2-1 in the NCAAs just to get to the Frozen Four. That had to be a huge piece, Joe, to the success that your team eventually had, knowing that the national champions were there. You were likely going to have to get through them. You played them 4 times, and you and I both know beating Mike Carroll once is an accomplishment. You beat him 4 times in 1 year. You got one hell of a team to do that.
Yeah, it was really crazy. I would never expect that to happen. Usually we'll get a split with them, like we've done the last few years. But yeah, most teams, like you look at the MIAC, there's a lot of teams that have never won a game in St. Peter ever.
Right.
And we've really had Gustavus's number the last few years, but is that play-in game into the Frozen Four. They've kind of had our number 2 out of the last 4 now, but they had previous 2 years were going into that game this year. I'm like, this is really kind of the national championship, because this is going to be the toughest game to win. And in the previous 2 years, we didn't win that game. And I knew in the back of my mind, if we beat Gustavus, we're going to win a national championship, because there wasn't anybody that was going to beat us. And I didn't really think that this year, because I just going into this year, I didn't think we were going to have this kind of year. But once we got to that game, here we are playing Gustavus for the 4th time to host and to get to the Frozen Four. And that was the most stressful of all the games, and probably the most difficult one to win. And they bring a lot of fans too, and there was almost 3,000 people in there. We only seat 1,400. So, but again, it's Mike Carroll. Again, he puts the same product out on the ice every year too, and they're a phenomenal program, phenomenal team, and he's got a lot of good players. So to beat them 4 times was really almost as remarkable as any other thing on this team's resume.
And I believe it. I know how well coached they are. I know how hard they play and how talented they are. When I saw that, when I went through your schedule today, I'm like, oh my God, that had to be a pressure cooker. So you mentioned the crowds, and that's going to lead me to my next question, because on Friday night, I went down to St. Paul for the Minnesota PWHL game against Boston, and I knew there'd be a decent crowd, but at the same time, on that Friday night, the Twins were at home, and the Timberwolves are playing a home playoff game, and they've kind of taken over the town. And so I'm like, man, that's really going to hurt attendance. So I was not expecting over 9,000 fans. And Joe, I got to tell you, I was struck by, number one, how good the atmosphere was. Number two, how many young girls were in that crowd with the Homer Hanky type of things and the purple gear. There were a ton. I'd say half the crowd were girls probably under the age of 15. It was like a Taylor Swift concert. And I guess for me, as a former women's coach, and now looking at what you're doing right now in River Falls, I look forward to the next decade and the trickle-down effect that this league might have. And I got to think that's only going to make the game that much better.
Yeah, you are right on with that. And it is looking at that, I'm just watching on TV. I missed the first period of the last game, but I was up on Otter Tail Lake with my mom watching the second, third period. But yeah, just when they show the crowd, and like you said, all those girls there, and the fact that there's that many boys and men, and just the crowd and how into it they are, and what a great thing for Minnesota hockey. I just girls hockey especially, but yeah, like you said, it's gonna trickle down. But yeah, what a success! What a success story for the PWHL this year, and now Minnesota to be in a Game 5, and all that's going to help girls hockey.
Well, when I first started coaching in the late '90s at St. Thomas, my first roster, we actually had girls on that team that played other sports in high school that just kind of came to hockey in college. It was a club team until we started the program. And I look at where the game has gone, and I watched your highlights from some of your playoff games this morning. And, I've only been away from the game on the coaching side since '07. So the game had evolved and the game was good when I left it. But I look at where it is now and the speed and the skill. And it's probably you're too close to it because you're in it every single year. And I've kind of taken a step back. But I just watched your highlights, and a couple of those goals your team scored, one in particular where a kid took the puck in the neutral zone and she looked like Mike Madonna, right? With the parting of the C's and splitting the D. And the game has really gotten to a good place. My point is, women's hockey is here now, but I mean, the window is opening with the P-Dub and all the different people that are coming to the game. Who knows where it can go? You've lived it. How far has it come from where you started to where we are right now with who you're coaching?
Well, like I said a little bit ago, I would have never in my wildest dreams thought that it would be like it is. When you walk in the rink, and not only just to see the crowds like we had here, but just from a skill level and the speed and the strength. And, if somebody would have told me when they hired me 25 years ago that in 25 years from now, it's going to keep getting better. It gets better every single year. And, and I'm talking about the Division 3 level. It's really crazy because back when you and I were coaching against each other, yeah, we had good players, but a lot of those players, probably more than half, couldn't make our team now. They could be playing college hockey somewhere, but like I've had 3 Laura Hurd, National Players of the Year here, and those kids would be, first line for the Gophers 10 years ago. Maybe not. I mean, it's maybe a little different because you had the Darwitzes, and the Chrissy Wendell, and those girls that played boys all the way up, and those top end kids were phenomenal back then, as good as anybody nowadays. You start talking about the second, third lines, and I have kids now that would be a lot better than those players. And it's hard to believe, but and it's hard to believe that it just still keeps getting better.
It's amazing. It is. It's great to see. And I truly believe after watching not only what I saw in person on Friday, but then watching the game on TV Sunday and seeing over 13,000 fans there, it's exciting. Like I'm excited because, the game is changing, the game is growing. And I think, more kids are coming to the girls' side of hockey. And so for you specifically being a part of that at River Falls, I think all boats are going to rise. It's going to continue to grow. And what you've established now off what you guys have done here in the last handful of years, there's a level of excellence and you guys have arrived. Like it's the Western side of Division 3 hockey has flipped the script. And that's what I'm so happy about because for years, I've talked about this before, for years, women's hockey, specifically Division 3, was dominated by teams on the East Coast. They got to host every year. They won it every year. And we had great teams, but we weren't able to crack the code. Gustavus did it. Now you did it. So I kind of feel like the whole thing is flipped.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is one of those things. It's still frustrating because how the NCAA works, it's still a lot harder for a Western team to win
For
because
sure.
all the cards are against you. And on the men's side too, it's crazy. Like even this year, we're the number one undefeated team. We have to play Gustavus, number 2, to get to the Frozen Four.
Makes
And then,
no sense. It's geography, right? It's budgets. I get
yeah,
it, but it still sucks.
money. But it does, and it's not fair. And then they throw Adrian in our bracket too, who's the number 3 team in the country. But with that aside, though, you think of how far it's come in the West for like Gustavus last year to win it, and us to win it this year. Like last year, we went out, we played in the Cardinal Panther Classic, which is Middlebury, Plattsburgh, and then they usually have 2 other top 10 teams. They try to get them from the West here, but we go out, we play in that thing. A couple of years ago, we beat Adrian, but we lost to Platty 3-1. Nobody in that tournament, Plattsburgh or Middlebury has won that tournament every single year of its existence. No other team has won that tournament, especially a team from the West. And we went out there last year and we won that thing. And that was really the first time I think a Western team really, people started to pay attention. And, and then Gustavus goes and wins it all, and then we do this year. But, when we won that tournament last year, it's kind of the first time really where the girls on my team are, they don't even know that the East is better than them, and sometimes a little ignorance is bliss because they expected to win, not really expect to win because that's one of my pet peeves in coaching. Never play like you expect to win, but they don't that mentality that the East is better than you. They didn't have that, and I think that was really kind of the precursor to how this whole season this year laid out, and being 31-0 was winning that tournament last year.
What a magical year! 31-0-0, most wins ever. National Coach of the Year. This is it's great stuff, Joe, and I'm thrilled we got to share it today. We're going to come to the end here now with the hat trick hot seat. I've got 3 quick questions. There's no wrong answer, and I don't know the answers. All the conversations we've had over the years, I'm going to be learning as we go here. So we're going to start with this one. You have to watch a sports movie tonight. It's got to be your all-time favorite sports movie. So if you and your beautiful wife, Sue, are sitting down to watch that movie, what is it tonight?
Man, I guess it would probably have to be Hoosiers. I haven't seen that for a long time, but when he gets the tape measure out and measures
it's the best.
That scene, I think of that probably once a week because it's the best. It's that pretty much sums up like an underdog. But yeah, I would think that would be it. That probably Happy Gilmore would be a close second. No, I'm just
with Bob Barker. But people ask me all the time, my favorite sports movie. That's my answer, Joe. And they're like, well, you're a hockey guy. I'm like, you're missing the point. Like, I think of the Minnesota State tournament. I think of the underdogs and like Gene Hackman, that storyline.
Yeah.
Even though I am a hockey guy and I don't love basketball, I love that movie so much. I'm so happy you picked it. All right. This one I really am curious about because we're kind of roughly the same age. The first concert you went to, what was the venue and which band or performer was it?
I went to a lot of concerts. This probably isn't the answer you're looking for because my parents took me to lots of concerts growing up.
Me too.
I would go and see, Johnny Cash and June Carter and the Kendalls and the Statler brothers and that stuff. But so I grew up looking at watching all that, but the first concert I went to, with my buddies, where we headed up to Fargo and we saw Cheap Trick. And and they're still rocking it today. They were at the North Dakota State Fair a couple of years ago, and we went in and watched her. Or I didn't. My brother went in, and I was listening to them because we're right outside the grandstand, and they sounded as good last year as they did when I went and saw them in 1981 or whatever it was. With that bald guy with the 2 necks on his on his guitar and throwing his picks out, and that would really be my first one.
That's a good story there. Going to Fargo to see Cheap Trick. I can only imagine the trouble you guys got in. That's fantastic. All right. Final one is if my buddies and I are coming to River Falls, let's say it's a weekend. Let's say we want to watch football because my buddies and I love in the fall to watch either college or pro football. So it's a bar restaurant. It's in River Falls. Where is your favorite place to hunker down and watch sports and maybe have some good bar food?
Well, I guess if I had to pick a bar to go to, I'd be going to Johnny's. It used to be the Main Streeter, but they're no longer here. That's back in the day when you and I coached against each other.
Yes,
We'd
I
always go
remember
down to
that.
the Main Streeter because I'd always see your bus pull up at Luigi's because that was your favorite place to get. Am I right?
Yes, you're 100%
Yep.
right.
Yep. So, but to get something to eat, there's Junior's is really good in town, and that's probably the place to go to get some really good food. And but it used to be Bo's and mine. Now it's the Nutty Squirrel. That's a great place too. And there's Bros is a really, they have great wraps like buffalo chicken wraps, and they have a lot of they're big fans and supporters of our women's hockey team too. So there's some great places in town.
Well, that main drag is spectacular. So if you're listening out there and you're a fan of great women's hockey, next fall or winter, get down to River Falls, stop by one of those establishments, and go watch Joe Cranston's River Falls Falcons. You won't be disappointed. The rink is spectacular. The team is great, and I love downtown River Falls. It's one of my very favorite stops. So great stuff, Joe. Can't thank you enough for doing this. It brought me back to such a fun time in my life, and I mean this sincerely. One of the real good guys in the game of hockey, and I've met all kinds in my 50 plus years of being around the game. You're one of my very favorites. Thanks for doing this today. I'm so happy for what you guys have accomplished. I can't wait to see what's next for River Falls.
Well, thank you. It's been fun talking with you. It's always fun talking with you. Fun to see you. And I missed recruiting times together, playing the clock game and all that. And it's never been the same without Gorgie out there. But really appreciate this opportunity, and it's always great to talk with you. Greatly appreciate it.
That's the great Joe Cranston, head coach of the River Falls Falcons. We'll be back here on Wooden Sticks after a quick break to close the show today. All right, we're back here on Wooden Sticks. So fun to connect with my buddy Joe Cranston today. So happy for him. I got to tell you, he made life tough when I was coaching for those 10 years at St. Thomas. Both he and Mike Carroll had such good teams. Gustavus and River Falls, along with our Tommies at St. Thomas, were three of the top 10 teams in the country. It felt like every year, and you knew the road would be hard. And the one real great team we had, we looked like a team that could make a run, and we got to River Falls in that game to go to the Frozen Four, and we got our doors blown right off. They beat us, I think, 5-1 that night. It was 1-1 after one. We had been outshot, outplayed, but per usual, we had pretty good goaltending. And then the floodgates opened up in period two. We never recovered. And Joe, as you can tell from our conversation, he's a down-to-earth guy, hardworking guy, does it the right way. And you love seeing guys like Joe Cranston have success. And just a high character human being. And I love that we're still friends. I love that we still text during wild games, and he'll update me on the Falcons and all that good stuff. And I mean it sincerely. If you're out there and you're listening, and maybe you've got a young lady that's playing the game, take the trip down to River Falls. It's an easy drive, probably an hour here from the Twin Cities, downtown, spectacular restaurants and bars, great venue to watch. And it's really good hockey. That's what struck me watching some of the highlights this morning, preparing for our interview today, just how good the hockey's gotten. And I kind of lose track a little bit now with my travel schedule with the Wild in the winter. And so I kind of live vicariously through those text conversations with Coach Joe, but seeing some of the footage today and then kind of reliving the season they had, it's pretty unbelievable to go 31-0-0 and to win that national championship and do it in front of your home fans, in front of a jam-packed arena. It just shows you how far the game is coming. And I'm sincerely excited about where it's going, because I really had a blast watching the game this weekend in St. Paul for the Minnesota PWHL squad, and got a lot of dear friends in that league. I was torn. I've got some obvious friends, Kelly Panic on the Minnesota side, and Taylor Heisey, and got to see Luke Cunnin. His wife plays for Minnesota. But then the other side, I've got one of my closest friends, Gigi Marvin, playing for Boston, a former guest on our show here. So it was just an amazing atmosphere. to see. And so in the years to come here, take the time to get down there and watch what is a tremendous product that they're putting on in St. Paul with the P-Dub. And really excited to see how that game turns out as we record this. The championship game is tonight, the final game, Game 5, between Minnesota and Boston. Looking forward to seeing that, and looking forward to more great guests here as the summer rolls along. So I want to thank Minnesota Masonic Charities and the folks from Beta Bay Boat Club for their continuing support of our show, and love to get you involved with Karen Cleary, kcleary@talknorth.com if you want to be a part of the show. And this is Wooden Sticks. I am Kevin Gork. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next week.